in the late '70s, I was playing with Delbert, and we opened some Willie and Waylon shows. They were Willie shows, but it was kind of Waylon and Willie kind of period of time, and Waylon was there, but I was always too scared to even go and say hi to Waylon in those days because he'd have a couple of bikers as bodyguards, and I could hang with Willie and Delbert and stuff, but I never really got to know Waylon, and then he started recording some of my songs. I had a song that was kind of a mini hit, "Working Without a Net," because I had four sons, and I knew that Waylon had Shooter by then, and so I wrote a song with my friend John Jarvis called "Fathers and Sons," and Waylon recorded that. On the heels of him recording a few songs of mine, somebody gave him a record of mine that had the song "Trouble with the Truth" on it. Later on, Patty Loveless recorded that song, but anyway, he just called me. Says, "I like that Truth song of yours, and you want to try to come up with something?" And well, yeah. And the first day I got together with him to write, I had an idea in my mind because I'd read Willie Nelson's biography, and he talked about how he looked in the mirror and said, "Who's that wrinkled up old dude? I'm 18 years old. What is that?" And so I had this concept of it ain't you, the reflection in the mirror, it ain't you kind of a thing. And so I had it going, and I thought, well, this would be good to take to Waylon. So I had the song kind of started in my pocket, and I got there at 10:30 or so, and Waylon was so sweet and friendly and started telling stories, and just one thing after another. It got to be like 1 o'clock, and then we had lunch, and it had to be like a white bean soup and a real straight up salad because his diabetes. He had to have a certain kind of diet. So now it's like 2 in the afternoon. I still hadn't been able to pull out my song and start it with him. And anyway, we finally got rolling on it. He told me all the stories about getting busted. Those two buildings over there on Music Row. He had two buildings together. You've probably heard the Hank Jr. and Waylon were recording "Storms Never Last," the song of Jesse's, and Richie was engineering. Richie Albright, that was the drummer and producer for Waylon for all these years, and they came in to bust Waylon. They had proof that there was cocaine there, you know, and you couldn't see out. They came in the control room. You couldn't see out where they were tracking. They had the lights turned off, and he and Hank Jr. were out there. And so Richie, smart as he was, just pushed down the talk back, and so everything that was said was being heard by the guys out in the room, and they're saying, "We've got a warrant for this, that, and the other." Well, of course, they immediately got the blow and put it behind a baffle, you know, and hid that so it couldn't, in a way that it could not be found, pulling up the back baffle and sticking it up under there or whatever they did. And then they walked in the room, and the guy said, "We've got a warrant." And they hand Waylon the warrant. He looks at it and he says, "Hoss, you got the wrong address. You got the wrong building. You're in the wrong place." And the guy looks at it and realizes, he says, "No, this is 2017 and it's 2015 or whatever. Those are not the correct numbers." But the guy said, "Okay, we're going to go get another warrant, but we're going to leave a guy with you." Um, and so by this point, Richie had figured out the diversion of turning the music up really ridiculously loud, you know. And then I think Waylon's agent showed up, and there's a lot of confusion going on, and so Waylon walked into the bathroom, realized he had a pocket full of pills, and he thought, well, this guy's got his eyes on me. I gotta go dump these pills, and so he walked into the bathroom, and the guy followed him, started following him into the bathroom. Waylon turned around and said, I don't know who you think you are or what your job is, but ain't no man gonna watch me take a shit. And and so Waylon goes in, dumps the pills, and immediately flushes. And the guys outside, and Richie told me the look on the guy's face, because he had time to do anything in the bathroom before the flush came. And they came back with the new warrant, and there were no drugs there. There's nothing there. Everything was gone, and they got completely out of that one. But yeah, he told me that great story. He told me the story of about the Buddy Holly thing, like not getting on the flight, and one time Waylon told the story about how they played the gig that night, the night that Buddy died. They played the gig. And Waylon had some kind of thing. He was talking to the students at Belmont, and they said, "Well, tell us something about the music business." And he said, "Well, the night Buddy Holly died in the plane wreck, we went ahead and played the gig because the club owner asked us to play the gig, go ahead and make some music. So we played the gig. At the end of the night, we went to get paid, and the guy said, says here on the contracts, Buddy Holly's supposed to be here. He didn't pay him." So, and he's talking to a bunch of Belmont students. So that's what the music business is all about. There you go. There's my example for you. I got to spend a bunch of time with Waylon. Um, we wrote that one song, and that day there was that telly over there um, that was kind of peeking from behind a chair. Just the headstock was sticking up, and I'm walking around the room trying to think of the words, and I keep seeing this thing, and finally I pick it up and plunk around on it a little bit, and said, "Oh wow, you got an old telly here?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, I want you to have that. Take that with you." Mark Knopfler's over here. He put a little cigarette burn up here, but something's wrong with electronics or something, and just take it with you. It's been behind that couch over there for a couple, 3 years. Nobody ever plays it, and just says, I need to get rid of it. And I'm saying, you're not gonna give you're gonna give me this guitar? And it's from 1956. And I said, the Japanese are buying these things up. Um, this thing's worth $7,000. And this is 25 years ago. So now like 50 grand or whatever it'd be. And I said, you need to hang on to this. It's worth more than a lot more than what you paid for it in 1956. Because he told me he had bought it new in '56 and it had just been laying around. He played all those guitars with the leather on them by then. He said, "Well, you're not going to sell it, are you?" And the rest of the day, we finished the song, and I would go to take a leak or something, and I look in the mirror, and I'm going, "Yes." I mean, I couldn't believe that he'd give me the guitar. And then as I was leaving, I was like embarrassed to just say, "Okay, I'll take my guitar." And so I took my acoustic and my little shoebox tape recorder. Waylon sang the only recorded version of the song. Um, that was the only demo we ever had. So I take all my stuff and putting it in the car, and he's standing there in the door. And he says, "You're not going to leave without your new old guitar, are you?" And I said, "You're really going to give me that thing?" He says, "I'm not going to give it to you. I gave it to you in there." And he went and got it and brought it out and put it in the back seat of the car. He says, "Man, I'm so sorry. I don't know where a case is to this thing. And I was just completely blown away. I came home and called James Pennebaker immediately, and James knows everything about Fender guitars in the world. He came over, popped the neck off, and it said Taddeo. So I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the guy that was putting Fender guitars together in 1956 in Fullerton. And James said, "Oh yeah, this is that. This is the deal." Yeah, it was unreal, and it's a treasure, a lifetime treasure. Funny thing is, I saw him a couple of years later because Donnie Fritz was in poor health, and Waylon had come down to play a benefit for Donnie, and Christopherson was there too and stuff. And I saw Waylon. By now he was in a wheelchair, and he says everybody's been telling me about me giving you that telly. He said, I guess I was crazy to give you that thing. He says, where is it? Like, I need that thing back. Yeah. It was so sad to see him, you know, get worse and worse, and they had to amputate him, his foot and stuff, and he moved back to Phoenix and sold his place over where we wrote all our songs. When we first started writing, the shooter was a little kid upstairs banging on the drums. You know, it's like he was so sweet and nice that I couldn't believe it. And at one point, I told him, I said, "Man, we used to open some shows for you and Willie in the '70s, and I was scared to even come up and talk to you because he said all Hoss, I was just high and scared, you know." And yeah, he was a treasure of a guy. Yeah, we played a few gigs together. Me and Richie and B Spears played at this place downtown called Puckett's. We played there a couple of times, and then I produced a record on Billy Joe Shaver called "Wacko from Waco." I got Richie and B to play on that record, you know, because I mean the whole Waylon thing is it's just you've heard it before. It's Richie's foot, you know. It's like the key to the whole beat, everything about it. It's like every drummer just went straight to that, and there was something that Richie had that was like you think, well, it's just four on the floor. I mean, what's the big deal? And then you realize, oh, it's the way he does it. That yeah, Richie was special. Yeah, first time I ever wrote a song with Waylon Jennings, this guitar was kind of, if you imagine it, behind this chair, kind of peeking up like that. And I picked it up and blocked around on it a little bit. And he said, Hoss, I want you to have that. Take it with you. And he says, Mark Knopfler's over here. He put a little cigarette burn right there. And but he said it's something's wrong with electronics. It doesn't work right. At the time, it had a tray that was on those brass trays and had all brass saddles here. And he said he bought it new in '56. And I had a picture that Jesse gave me of him playing it at a bar in Phoenix. And it had one of those curly cords that went straight back to a super reverb that had one of those lancings in it. It's like, yeah, loud. You know. So I brought it home. I realized I got to get him to sign it. And so I took it back the next day, and he wrote, Gary, enjoy it, Waylon. And
is that Waylon's buckle rash on the back of that?
Yeah, I guess so. It's not mine. He played it for a good while, and then he started playing those guitars with the leather on them. Barbara and I got married in '73, and so for our honeymoon we went to Willie's Picnic in '73 and stayed in a camper with some friends, and somehow I finagled. The only place you could have any shade was under the stage or on Waylon's bus. And so I can't remember who I knew, but somehow I finagled my way to get backstage, and I'm hanging out, and I'm kind of getting into some shade, and Barbara's back in the camper, and you're trying to get out of the heat for a little bit. I mean, it was blistering out there, and that's where I met Billy Joe for the first time, and I think I could have my dates wrong, but I think that's the scene where there's a little teardrop camper thing that Waylon was in, and Billy Joe was playing Willie Wonder and Gypsy and Me, and Waylon heard that song and said, "You got any more of those?" And Billy says, "Yeah, I got a sack full of these kind of songs," and that's kind of where it started. years went on. I moved to Nashville in 1980, and after moving, I was here for a couple of weeks, and I started playing with Guy Clark on the road for 3 years or so. And after Guy lost his record deal, he went back playing solo again, and I was playing at this place called Cantrell's with some other guys, just a jam band throw together thing, and Eddie heard me playing and invited me to play with him and Billy, and we had a band, and that was the start of it. His van, Old Blue, had 350,000 miles on it already. When I got in the band, we had a platform in the back of it that there was a mattress on top of that. And we loaded all the gear because we didn't want to have to pull a trailer, so we could put all the gear underneath the platform, and then there's a mattress. And so it was a crazy, huge band. It was me and Eddie both playing guitars, and Paco Ship played harmonica, and Reno Clean played bass, and Leland Waddell played drums. I think I've got all these names right. But anyway, there were too many of us, and Billy's van was just two captain's chairs in the front, and then Billy's old living room couch stuck behind then. And it's like one of those with the cushions were marshmallows in and you just sink down and you're just floating around, and then somebody had to lay on that mattress. A couple of guys for us to all squeeze in there. A couple of guys had to be laying on that mattress above that was on the platform. And the air conditioning in Texas to get back that far was pretty miserable. But actually, one time we got stranded down in Texas, and the guy that had been booking me down in Texas, we got there and a couple of gigs got canceled, and we're just floating around. And so I called this guy, was a friend of mine, a promoter, and I said, well, I'm playing with Billy Joe Shaver. Can you find us some gigs? And so he found a few things for us to do, and one of them we got stiffed. God, I might as well tell you this story. It's like we played loud and proud all night long, and we would try to stop, and they kept us playing. We kept playing over and over. People would not let us stop, and the place was jam packed full of people, and we just went on and on. Finally, we quit, and so the promoter had been there at the door, and the guy that booked the gig for us had a clicker, and he'd been counting people that were coming in. He knew how much money was coming through the door. He went to the promoter and he said, "You got the money?" And the guy said, "I can't pay you." He says, "Yeah, but I know what kind of money's come through the door all night long." He says, "I can't pay you." And so Ed started following the guy as he's walking away, and the guy pulls open his coat. He's got a pistol in his belt. He says, "I can't pay you now, but I will pay you. And don't stop me, or there's gonna be trouble, and you're gonna get hurt." And he's like, "Okay, man." So he walks away. Well, in the meantime, we're winding up cords and packing up the trailer, or we didn't have a trailer. We're just trying to get our gear out, and these gals, I don't know how they knew we didn't get paid, but they had like 22 rifles, shotguns, some handguns. They laid them on the bar that was across over here, and they're saying, "Well, I guess you guys don't like it, do you?" And we're saying, "Well, what do you mean don't?" You know, we didn't know what there was to not like. We didn't know that we weren't getting paid at that point, and we were trying to figure out everything. And anyway, we went down the road, and Billy told us. He said, if it was Waylon used to carry dynamite. And if somebody didn't pay, and he'd show you the dynamite and run his finger across it and throw it at the wall, and it would make a sound like a bullet or something. And he said he wouldn't hesitate to blow the ass in off a metal building honky tonk somewhere. Realized we weren't going to get paid, and so we went to my dad's apartment. My dad was out of town in East Texas, and so I knew the apartment was available, and so We went and we all stayed, slept on the floor, and took over my dad's apartment. And everybody got situated except for me, and I slept in the van. And the next day we're leaving, and Billy Joe has $100 bill, and he throws $100 bill on the table. I said, "What's that about?" And he says, "We got to leave something for your dad for letting us stay there." I said, "Billy, we wouldn't have had to drive 3 hours out of the way to get to stay here for free. We could have gotten rooms with that $100." He said, "Yeah, but we got to leave something for your dad." And I said, "Leave him a 10 spot." And he left him a $10 bill, and we left. But so anyway, the end of the story is 3 days later or so, the promoter guy met us at a Denny's somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. He had all the money, paid us, and he had used the money to go do a dope deal. And we got paid everything that was coming to us. And it was a good payday for the whole band, too, because it was packed full in this place. I don't have any idea what the guy's dope deal was or how he used the money to make it happen. I assume he just bought a bunch of dope and then turned it around, and you know I never knew the particulars of what happened, but we all got paid good.
Did you ever see any moments of Billy Joe, his mean side or his temper?
That's what's so amazing. I knew Billy starting in 84, 85 or so. I never saw Billy drunk. I never saw him smoke a joint, really. I know. I mean, I would try to ride up front with him because he insisted on driving. He he just didn't want anybody else to drive, and so I'm thinking, well, he's driving all this way, and so I was nervous a little bit. I just wanted to be up front, but we'd start. Billy always talked in song titles to me, and we got somewhere, and Billy and I would room together because Eddie wanted to stay up all night and party, carry on. I woke up one morning, my guitar case was open, and as soon as if we went to bed at 4 o'clock, if it's 6 o'clock and the light hit the blinds, Billy's up and rocking. I'm trying to get some more sleep with the covers over my head and stuff. Anyway, my guitar case was open. I had some lyrics I was working on, and Billy had walked across the parking lot to the Dollar General and got a red pencil and came back and wrote C minus minus needs work, SP, scratched out places. This is 4 or 5 of my lyrics on a yellow pad in my guitar case. And
He's grading them?
yeah, he graded my lyrics. And I was trying to be a vegetarian. It's a ridiculous thing to think that you could try to follow a vegetarian diet in Texas. It's like we're starting to get some barbecue up here, and Billy called me Gar, for Gary, Gar and the Gar fish, I guess. So, well, Gar, we got a McDonald's up here on the right. We're getting ready to stop, but good news for you is there's a nice pasture out beside of it. I loved him so much. He's like a family member. I've got this painting that he gave me of himself. It's down in the basement. I'll show it to you. And I got to produce his last record, Long in the Tooth, with Ray Kennedy, and Ray produced all those great Shaver records and stuff, and it was just wonderful. I went to Waco and stayed with him for a week in Waco, and wrote half of the songs on the record with him. Billy was the most paranoid person who's ever lived. He had, if you picture Billy's front door, there's a hasp lock that goes up this way, 2 of them going up that way, 2 more going into the side, and 2 more on the ground. And you close the hasp and you put a lock on it. And he carried the keys to all those locks on his belt. And then on the back door on the inside, it's one of these things, you put a piece of wood, so if somebody breaks in, they still can't get in get the door open. So that's on the back door. So every time we just go down the street to get a barbecue sandwich or something, he's got to unlock all those locks. You know, he was convinced that somebody was trying to get. Well, there's nothing to steal. I mean, a flat screen TV and some Billy Joe Shaver merch, and um,
Did he have a
but
real modest house?
oh yeah, just a little tract house, there in Waco with the room that I was in. The shower was about as big as that guitar case. It's just. Um, but so Norm Macdonald called and wanted Billy to. This is a few years after we made the record, and Norm Macdonald was a big Billy Joe Shaver fan, and he said, "Come to Hollywood and build my TV show." So Billy called me, and I flew from here, and he flew from. We met in Austin, and flew to Hollywood together, and there we were. They put us up at the W Hotel, and it's. I've got a great picture of Billy on Hollywood Boulevard with all the stars behind him and stuff walking. It's great. And so we did the TV show, and it was just me strumming and Billy Joe singing the songs. Billy didn't try to play at that point, and so um, we went and got something to eat, and I showed him where I had landed, and it was right across the street from where I landed in Hollywood when I was 20 years old. I moved to Hollywood. I said that's where I used to live, and now it was a piano bar or something. And we hung out, and we went up in the room and kind of figured out what songs we were going to play. So the next day we came and we did the songs, and Billy was just, he was more Billy Joe'd out than ever. And I don't know if you ever saw Norm Macdonald's TV show, but he had a little sidekick guy, and this sidekick guy had a little smaller than usual cowboy hat on. He looked like a howdy doody thing. He had a vest on him. And Billy just ripped into him. I mean, he made fun of him mercilessly
Norm
throughout
Macdonald.
the whole thing, and Norm was going right along with it, and and Billy was, giving Norm shit too. So we played the songs that we had prepared to play, and then Norm kept saying, "No, I want to hear George on a Fast Train. I want to hear Black Rose. I want to hear." He kept naming off titles, and it got to the point where I'm kicking off Billy Joe's songs in the wrong key because I don't remember, and he can't tell me what key it's in. He just knows he's going to sing it whenever I start playing. And we hung out with Norm way into the evening, and I was just so impressed with Norm Macdonald knowing the words to every Billy Joe Shaver third verse. I mean, he was into it.
I've heard
And
him call him the greatest songwriter of all time.
yeah, well, yeah, so would Willie and Duvall, and I mean, Billy's so special because he really was gifted. It's not like he was crafting something, or the songs came to him. And when I first started writing with him, it was like I was amazed that he was as crafty as he was. He was very particular about having the rhymes be a certain way, and he was like a guy who had written songs at a publishing company or something. I never figured. I always thought that for Billy Joe Shaver, songs just appeared, you know, and that's really the way it was. But when you really got down to shining up the songs and making them be what they're going to be, um, he was a craftsman as well as a savant, you know.
Did he ever talk about the to Narrows of the Harpeth to kill himself?
He told me the story. The way Billy talks about it is that he just kind of gotten to the end of his rope, and he found this place. I guess it's out in Dixon somewhere, out in the country, and you get up on a high ledge and you can look out over. And he told himself that he was just going to jump off of that, kill himself. And he started walking up there, and Old Chunk of Coal came to him. By the time he got up there, he had Old Chunk of Coal, and he couldn't kill himself. He had all chunk of coal, you know. Um, that's a real capsulized version of it, but that's the way he says it happened, you know. It's like he was such a storyteller that you wonder, well, is that really what happened? Or, but, as magical as he was, I'll accept anything. I was crazy about him. And when it was just me and him, it's like he was like an older brother, or just we're pals and everything. If a third person came into the room or into the situation we were in, he'd turn into Billy Joe Shaver immediately. And Delbert used to say, "Yeah, Billy Joe's acting like Billy Joe Shaver again today." It's like, but and it's like somehow he decided. But he had that. He always wore the same denim shirt and jeans, and he had that belt that was made out of a horse halter that Brenda had made for him. He wore that belt for 40 years.
The great buckle.
Yeah, it just the one that
Circles.
the little brass thing, and that was his dress, and I stayed with him for a week in Waco, and when I came out and I looked out on the line, and there were like four identical denim shirts hanging, hanging outside. It's like he had it figured out. Billy Joe and I had a song called "The Get Go." It's been that way since the get go. And Willie recorded a version with Jamie Johnson, and then we had Billy Joe's version, and we got Willie to sing on Billy Joe's version. And Willie came to sing on it, and he just did it one time, and it was over with. And Willie was leaving, and he walked out the door, and he came back, and he said, "Just so you know, if you never need anything from me for Billy Joe, don't hesitate to call me. Anything you need for Billy Joe." And it's like, all right. Yeah. Those guys loved each other. Everybody was crazy about Billy Joe. It's like, but the odd thing for me is like, I never saw him crazy high. I never saw him do anything weird. I never saw any of the bad side of him, the bad, mean, crazy Billy Joe that you'd heard rumors about and whatever. Never. Well, but weird shit happened to him. It's like this. Um, he had a van that was at the place in Waco, and somebody poured uh, sugar in his gas tank. And it's that kind of shit that would happen to him randomly that you could almost understand why he was um, as paranoid as he was. But the whole thing with those locks on the doors, that was just beyond nuts, you know. But man, he was so paranoid that we'd be talking on the phone and we have a song idea and we were throwing around a song idea back and forth. He says, "Gar, we better shut up. You know how they are in there in Nashville. This thing will be on the radio next week if we don't quit talking about it." I moved here in 1980. Within being here for a couple of weeks, I met Freddie Fletcher. He said, "Come over." And I didn't realize what was going on. I just showed up, and it was Freddie and Guy and the bass player and myself. And we just played some. And after playing for like an hour or so, Guy said, "Can we pick you up tomorrow? We're going to go to North Carolina." And I said, "Yeah." It's like, so it was that fast. I was in the band, and immediately, Guy had some kind of strange guitar that he was playing, and he wanted to play electric guitar. It's like he knew he wanted to project more than just he's trying to be in a band with bass and drums, and Guy had never been a guy to be in a band with bass and drums. He didn't know anything about how that worked. So I got my Strat, the one that's over there. I had this old '63 Strat. So Guy would put real heavy strings on it, and play it just like he's playing acoustic guitar. And that Strat through one of those acoustic amplifiers, that had the sliders on it for EQ on the front of it. He would play. I mean, it kind of sounded like a real amped up acoustic guitar. I mean, his playing style was just the same way. He had thumb pick, and he played it like he would be playing an acoustic. And at that time, I was playing that red Telly, and I had palm pedals on it. And I'd been coming off playing 6 nights a week in bars in Texas for a couple of years. So I'm wanking around on these palm pedals, and the guy was fascinated by palm pedals because you can have a fake steel guitar for part of the solo, and that was it. We just started traveling around, and it was great because Freddie Fletcher is one of the greatest characters ever of all time. He immediately named me Cowboy because I had a summer straw on and a big old belt buckle here, and a country and western dress code from Texas honky tonks. And so, okay, cowboy. But the tragic thing is the guy that played bass was from Mount St. Helens, and so Freddie nicknamed him Helen. We had a few years there, some great fun, and Guy really enjoyed playing electric guitar, and it was a unique thing because it was unlike anything else because he translated his acoustic guitar playing style to playing it on a Strat, and he made it work. And I'm just floating around playing palm pedal licks and trying to stay out of the way of the words because I knew about Guy's songs to an extent before I got the gig, but as soon as we started playing the songs, I realized what it was, and I was so scared of playing some goofy guitar lick that was going to distract someone from hearing those words. There's a certain skill set to staying out of the way of Guy Clark lyrics. Got to be careful. You know, and but I loved it every minute of it. It's like, well, they're just bars. Mostly. I mean, but we did do an Austin City Limits. And when we'd go to Austin, the gigs were a bit better, and we'd go through the South, Atlanta, and then over to the Carolinas. And a really great story is we got stranded in the Carolinas because we had some dates fall through and we couldn't get back. We could come home, sleep in our own bed for a night, and get up and drive back to where we were. So we just got holed up in a motel somewhere, and Freddie Joe and I would walk around the town and look around and stuff. Guy never got out of the motel room. He just holed up in there. So I started hanging out with him in there and just talking. And one night we were up late. It was like 3 in the morning, and we're drinking tequila and carrying on. And I started looking through this book of Guy's. That it's his book of his lyrics. And I don't know if you've ever seen example of Guy's printing style, but it's perfect. It's like just the script, the way it's very artful, the way he just wrote out the words perfectly. And I'm looking at this book, and it's like one, Let 'Em Roll and Texas Cooking and Texas 1947. Just all the songs, they're there. And you were drunk. And I just look at him and I said, do you realize how good this is? Do you realize what this is, how great this is? And he said, yeah. And there was no ego in it. It's like, he said, you can't do it and not know how good it is. And it was like, you think of Rembrandt looking at a painting that he had done and said, yeah, I think I got that right. Or what, it's like he could objectively look at it and say, well, yeah, it's really good work, you know.
Was he appreciated around town in this period?
Oh, I don't know. Right about the time I started working with him, he had a hit with Ricky Skaggs on Heartbroke, and it was a hit single, and guy didn't have a lot of hit singles. And at that time, you know, I was writing at Tree Publishing a little bit. Well, actually, I was still with Jim Ed Norman's publishing company, and the songs that I was getting recorded were by Mickey Gilley and Johnny Lee and those kind of people, and they they weren't Guy Clark level of songs, but they were commercial country radio. Please let me on the radio kind of songs, and I was thrilled to death to have songs on the charts and stuff. But we could be going down the road and one of my songs would come on the radio, and I wouldn't even act like I knew what it was. It's like I was so in awe of his art, and you know, he would say that's what it was. He was all about being an artist, and but he was sweet to me. I mean, he knew I was trying to raise a family from writing songs, and this is what you got to do if you're going to be a professional songwriter. You can't really indulge yourself in the kind of artistry that he. Later on, I could do that a little bit with a little bit of success later on, and when I had one of those kind of songs, and I get together with Guy to write, he'd say, "Well, what do you got?" And I could play him a song I was proud of, and he would be generous with letting me know that I was okay or whatever. Uh,
Did
but
you ever get to play one of his guitars that he made?
all the time, yeah.
What tell people what?
Oh, they're fantastic. Well, they're mostly. He started making guitars from a kid. I regret that he gave me the CD or the DVD to learn how to make a guitar, and he offered to make a guitar with me. But I'm not good at woodworking, and I was so stupid to not just go and do it. A few people did do it, but they were great classical style guitars, but they were steel strings, and he had some that were gut strings too. But a few of them were exceptional instruments, and he had his own headstock um, way, the way his headstock looked, and he'd sign them inside of it and get a little blood and put a Guy Clark thumbprint.
Do we know what happened to those guitars?
Well, I know he gave Lyle one. I think he gave one to Rodney. Verlin may have one. Um, yeah, I don't know where they all wound up.
Do you remember the last time you saw him?
Yes, tragically, he was in the assisted living kind of hospital place.
Hospice.
It wasn't actually. They weren't calling it hospice but he was in treatment over there, and it's the same place that my mother-in-law had been, and it's just you go over there, and went over there a few times with Sean, and Sean and I wrote a song for a guy, and it was called this. There's this guy. There's this guy, and we had the song, and we were happy with it, and we wanted to show it to him, and so we took it over there, and we played it for him, and he looked at me and he says, "Well, isn't that cute?" And it's like, we're like, "Oh, cute." Oh, if Guy said something was cute, well, that was the worst. But anyway, Sean said he played it for him at another time when it was just him and Guy, and Guy said that's really good, and thanked him for it and stuff. But the last time I saw him, he was all the nurses had just been in. He had a, they cleaned him up and he trimmed his beard and he was sitting up and um, it's like we knew it was goodbye, but we didn't really say it and those kind of things. There weren't any words. You know, to what are you gonna do? You just um, but there was a lot of activity over at that place, hospital place. Where I got there one time. Steve Earle was showed up at the same time, and we got to hang out in there together. And he had Sam Bush in there, and John Randall, and some other guys in there, and everybody go in there and play music and enjoy it. And John and I wrote a song with Guy that was title of one of his records called "Some Days You Write the Song, Some Days the Song Writes You," and John got a tattoo of it on his arm. There's a million Guy stories as well. He lived at the lake and he had this huge table at his place at the lake, and everybody carved their name into the table. And I took Delbert out there to hang out one time with him and carry on. And then years later, I took Delbert back over to his workshop and we wrote a song with him for Delbert to sing called "Starting a Rumor." I'm starting a rumor about being you. Oh man, I don't know. Those days at the lake, he would. I just go hang out with him and we rehearse. It's the most torturous thing in the world to think you're going to have to rehearse. But he wanted to do it enough so that I could sing some harmony with him. This is after the band that was electric, and it was just me playing acoustic along with him. It was just the two of us. And then he would work on my guitars sometimes. One time he called and said, "Bring your Martin. I'm going to adjust your bridge on." I had a D41 at the time. He said, "I'll fix the bridge on your guitar. I got something I want you to hear while we're doing it." And so he started digging into my bridge, and he said, "Check this out." And he put on a cassette, and it was Lyle Lovett's cassette that he had come to town with. And I said, "Wow, that guy's really good. He sings kind of like Jesse Winchester or something. It's like never heard him before." And within a couple of weeks, Guy had given that tape to Merlin Littlefield, who was the guy that worked at ASCAP, and I think Merlin got it to Tony Brown, and it was like only like a month later, Lyle had a record deal. And I'm so proud of Lyle because he always credits Guy for getting his career started. He always tells people about it. Man, I just got back this last weekend. I played at a festival in Rockport, which is Guy's hometown, there on the coast. And when I first started working with Guy, the South Coast of Texas was the record that he made previous to. There's a picture there of us making the Better Days record. But being down there in Rockport last weekend, there's all the boats there, and the place where the guy had his picture taken for the album cover of the South Coast of Texas record is there. And Guy's sister shows up, and she looks, I mean, you see the family resemblance immediately. And so for my set, the solo set, I played 5 or 6 songs that Guy and I had written together. A couple of them that no one's ever heard. And then at the end of the night, Sean and Vernon Thompson do their Guy tribute, which if you hadn't seen that, you got to find a way to. It's the most entertaining thing you can possibly see. I mean, for a songwriter, it's just outrageous. Those guys are rock stars doing Guy songs. It's incredible. But I found this song that in the '80s through the first half of the '90s, I didn't smoke marijuana at all because I had four little boys to raise, and I was busy. I'd get up every day and go to work. I was writing at Tree Publishing, and I had to focus on trying to get on records, get hits, and there wasn't any time to get high, you know. And so all this time went by, and I got together with Guy, and so he'd start, you know, drinking whiskey and smoking dope at 10:30 in the morning. And so about the third time I got together with him and didn't smoke or drink, he said, "Gary, you're gonna smoke some dope with me today," you know, and he says, "How many joints did we smoke going down the road, you know, a million years ago? Come on now, take a hit off this thing." So finally, I said, "Okay," and so took a couple of hits off this thing, and that day we wrote a song that I'm sure no song has ever been written like the song we wrote that day. It's a baseball gospel song called "Walk Me, Lord, Walk Me. Just let me get on base. Devil's throwing curveballs. He's cutting them across the plate. I don't want to go down swinging. Just keep me in the game. Walk me, Lord, walk me. I'll come stealing home someday." So I got to play that this last weekend at Rockport. It was a really fun thing. And then there's this other song that is hilarious because it's about Billy Sanders, the guy that played guitar with Delbert forever. And for a while, Billy and I were both in Delbert's band at the same time. He played a 335, and I don't know if you ever saw Delbert in those days. He bought a hat for Billy that he said, if I buy you that Hoss Cartwright hat, I'll buy it for you if you'll wear it. And so Billy wore it. So all this time goes by, and we're playing at the Lone Star in New York, and Billy shows up. He didn't go there with us. He just magically appears out of nowhere, and he's there, and he jumps up and plays with us, you know, for a few songs, and I'd give him my guitar, and he'd play for a while, and I'd go sit down and watch him and say, "Hey, Billy," and then he'd go, and I'd go and get my guitar back and play a few songs, and then he'd be back on stage and wanted the guitar back, getting the guitar back, and that happened like three or four times. I realized he was having me play so he could go and do some more blow and then get back on stage and play again. And so at the end of the night, he's drinking Long Island teas, and we see him get in a cab with a couple of old gals. And so I'd start telling Guy the story. And he said, "We got to write that, man. The last bite of the Big Apple," you know. And we had lines in there about you know, Billy going back to Fort Worth to sell used cars and stuff. It was a hilarious thing. But Guy sings the demo, and it's really funny. And yeah, it's an undiscovered guy, Jim. Yeah.
Hopefully that'll surface one day.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I think they're trying to put out some of Guy's stuff that nobody's ever heard before, and that's definitely one that hadn't been heard before. I mean, it's a real cheesy demo with a drum machine and me playing all the instruments and Guy singing, and you know, it's not in the character of a great Guy Clark record. It's Guy singing this silly song, but it's great. His vocals perfect. It's really really cool. Do you want to hear the way I started writing songs with John? My son was playing basketball, and I had a little Toyota Celica, and I was playing The Missing Years in my car when taking my son to basketball practice, and I kept playing that record, and my son got a job working at the Lion's Head Theater. John came in to go to the movies, and my son handed him his popcorn and said, "You're John Prine, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "My dad's been playing your record in the car a lot, and we really like it. And my dad's a songwriter too." And he said, "Oh, who's your dad?" And he told him, and John said, "Oh yeah, I know him. And and Nathan said, "You ought to be writing songs with my dad." And so the next day, John called me. He says, I ran into your son at the movie theater, and he said, we ought to be writing songs together. What do you got going on? And he just showed up, and it was in this room, and I had DA-88s or some different format in those days, but he was still smoking cigarettes, and he'd come with a 6 pack of Cokes and a bunch of cigarettes. And in those days, the way the studio was configured, the cigarette smoke went into the air conditioning system and went throughout the house. And so my wife would say, "Well, can't you get him to go outside and smoke?" And I said, "Baby, it's cold out there, and he's John Prine. I mean, I would have taken up smoking myself just to have him there." But it was so great because we could write a song, put down a beat, and play a few acoustics and a bass and maybe an electric part or something. And sometimes John would play, sometimes he wouldn't. But we'd just get the song down, a work tape form, and with him singing, of course, and send it to Howie because this was the second record that Howie Epstein was producing for John. So the first song, Howie said, "Hey, I like that. Go do that again." And so John kept coming over, and we wrote 6 songs for that record, and it was thrilling. I got to go and play on the record and be a part of it. It was a good hang for a while. It's just, he's magical. To I can't believe I'm writing songs with John Prine, kind of a thing. But, well, he'd show up about 6 o'clock with his Cokes and cigarettes, and we had an idea, and sometimes we didn't. I mean, the titles are really strange. I mean, "We Are the Lonely" was just "We Are the Lonely" all together, and it's cops eating donuts and crazy stuff, and then um, the song I really love is the cheating song is "Day Is Done." I don't know if you know that song,
Yeah.
but and then "Big Fat Love." We just had fun, and the wonderful thing is we didn't have to please anybody. For me, I was still writing at Tree Publishing in those days. I was a writer there for 15 years, and it was like getting out, letting out a country and western jail or something. It's like, wow, we can do anything we want, and the only person that's got to like it is John, you know, and Howie, and then Howie would we got to California, and Howie would start with having me play exactly what I played on the work tapes, and then he'd even be handing me the bass, and I'm looking at him like, "Howie, you're the bass player for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Don't hand me the bass." But he said, "No, just play what you played on the work tape. It's cool, whatever." But thankfully, he replaced a lot of that. But it's really fun to make that record. And I showed you that guitar that he gave me. We got to the guitar show, and I tried to write a check for the Harmony Rocket that I found, and I started writing the check, and the guy says, "No, I don't take checks." And so I said, "Well, I'll come back tomorrow with the cash." And John and I were in the parking lot, and we'd come there together. And he says, "Well, I'm going to come back tomorrow." I said, "I'm coming back tomorrow too. I got to get that Harmony Rocket." And so I didn't make it back the next day, but John did. And sweetheart that he was, he bought the guitar, and then he held on to it till Christmas Eve and put a big red bow on it and showed up at the side door. And the kids, by then John was some kind of folk hero. They loved all his music, and it was snowing, and he had some snow in his bed. Travis tells the story, my son Travis. And um, anyway, it was just he gifted me this great guitar, and he was just a treasure. Well, I mean, anybody that saw him and knew that he was John Prine was just, I'm sure there were people that were just in awe of him everywhere. I mean, How could you not be? A couple of times we played a festival up in Kentucky near Paradise. The Everly Brothers had a bit of a festival up there, and we played up there with Delbert one time, I think. And it was just John, just having him around. You know, you just look at him and start hearing those songs. His first record, I was living in Hollywood when his first record came out, and a friend of mine called me on the phone and said, "You got to get over here." And went and listened to John's record 3 or 4 times, and then on the way home, I went to Tower Records and bought my own copy. And, yeah. So I'm just a fan like everybody else, you know. If you don't know who John Prine is, what good are you in the world? Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever go eat meatloaf anywhere with him?
Yeah, we. I met him over at Arnold's many times. I think the last time I was there with him to share a meal was I was with Sean Camp and we were there and he just happened in. But a couple times I was just there and he didn't come with anybody. He came over there to eat meatloaf and that's why he was there. And there's a place, Copper Kettle down the street, and he signed the wall, you know, more meatloaf or something. You know, it's like, but when we were making the record, John, we'd get home from tracking all day, and we're staying in this hotel in Hollywood, and he'd just start cooking a cheeseburger in the middle of the night. I mean, it's 3 in the morning, and he's frying up a cheeseburger. That he was just the most down to earth, normal, regular guy that, you know, he'd talk to anybody about anything. He had no hint of pretension about him in any way. He was just John, you know. It's like very humble and sweet. Made you feel at ease immediately, and you know, I think he looked at the songs as something that just happened to him. You know, it's like I mean, he'd talk to me a little bit about how it all occurred, you know, from walking the mail route and all that, that songs would come to him, you know, and you can see it, you know, how it could have happened.
Did he ever talk about Roger Ebert showing up that night?
He didn't tell me that directly, but my dear friend Donnie Fritz was there that night. Paul Anka was there, and Donnie was playing with Christofferson, and Donnie was there when all that happened that time. He was a witness to that. Well, it's just, you know, I think there were tables. You know, they're putting the chairs on the tables. The place had closed down, and but Donnie was there because Chris was there. Donnie played with Chris for 20 years, and he started playing songs, and it's like play another one. And it just immediately, I think somebody, maybe Chris, called Jerry Wexler, and there was a record deal immediately. I mean, it's just like some kind of miracle, you know. That, and I think him and Goodman were like, how did this happen? It's like some kind of, you know, fairy godmother sprinkled something on us, and all of a sudden we're going to New York, and we both got a record deal. You know, it happened just immediately. It's pretty amazing. But who could be more deserving? I mean, it's like if anybody had happened across that bag of songs, you'd have to be a fool not to just know what treasure had been found. You know, just
Yeah.
yeah. It's all the main memories are of writing the songs. You know, and I would be so incredibly thrilled when I'd come up with a line and he'd go, "Yeah," and I'm going, "Oh, well, okay." And it's like to have him accept whatever my contributions were and whatever he said, I was going to go along with it immediately, you know. And the wilder, the better, you know. It's like Big Fat Love, and she's dancing on a razor blade or whatever, and you know, she's down the drain. You know, it's like the craziest things that we could possibly come up with. Well, everything's okay because it's all for John. You know, it's like no rules. And it was at a time for me when I was a staff writer at Sony Tree, and my job was to come up with a hit to keep my publishing deal and make a living as a songwriter. So you're focused on really trying to come up with some radio songs, and this had nothing to do with any of that. Just pure indulgence and fun with John Prine. You know, it's pretty magical. I remember the last conversation I had with. I think the last time I saw him was at Arnold's with Sean. We just happened to be there and we sat and had a meal with him. But no, maybe I saw him again at a Bluebird Christmas party, and it was after his last record had really taken off. All of a sudden, everything was just everybody was loving that record so much. His very last record, and he was just acting like, yeah, man. He was amazed that it was having all this success, and but the last conversation I had with him was I had written a song called Common Sense, and it's on my new record. And so I realized while I was writing it, well, John has a song called Common Sense. It was the title of one of his records. And so I called him up and said, hey, man, I wrote a song called Common Sense. He says, oh, wow, that's great. That's the easiest co-write I ever had in my life. You know, but, I played him the song, and he said, that's your song. It's just like titles don't make any, he said, I didn't have anything to do with that. It's your song. And anyway, that's the last time I talked to him was about that. I knew he was really close, and I wrote a song called Prine, and it's like I can't get John Prine off my mind, and it's like I was just taking a walk down the street, and I had the song going on in my head, and it was all about just celebrating John, and it references a few of his songs in the lyric. I got back to the house and I got the word that he had passed, and so my song didn't make sense anymore. So I had to adjust it and turn it around and make it more of a tribute to him. And my son Travis put together a video, and it's on YouTube and stuff. It's called Prine. It's just called Prine, and Travis put together a really sweet video. It didn't matter if you're writing a song or not. You know, the pretense of like after he came here, we wrote all those songs, and when the record came out, and he actually offered me the job to play with him on the road, and I was playing with Delbert at the time, and Al only wanted to pay me half as much as I was making with Delbert. So what are you going to do? But I regret that I didn't just do that anyway, just to have the experience of playing. But that's when he got the great guitar player that played with him all this time.
Jason Wilbur.
Jason Wilbur, yeah, and Dave Jakes, and they made beautiful music together for a long time. I was on the road, and it's like he got a guy before Jason was in the band. He got somebody, but he called me to do it, and there's no way to do it. It was our song, and I could have been on the TV show with John and everything, but it didn't work out. But so I never really got to play gigs with him. It would have been really fun. I was really proud of Howie the way Howie produced those records. They started from ground zero with a drum machine and just stack. He'd have me play a, an acoustic part and then get in a different capo position and play it again. And he'd stack up like 6 or 8 acoustic parts before going to electric, and he just kind of turned me loose to. And this was before Pro Tools. This was like just collecting a lot of stuff that Howie would then put it all together wonderfully. At the time, Howie and Carlin Carter were together, and Howie had a house in Beverly Hills, and the whole house seemed to be taken up by this huge console that was in one room. Yeah, this is a Harmony Rocket that John Prine gave me. We were at a guitar show here in Nashville, and I found this thing, and I'd always wanted one of these because I love the way these pickups sound. And so I found it, and I started writing the check. And the guy said, "I don't take checks." And so I said, "Oh well, I'll come back tomorrow." And so John and I were there together, and we were in the parking lot. I said, "I'm going to come back tomorrow," and he said, "Yeah, I'm coming back tomorrow too." I said, "Well, I'm going to come back and get that Harmony Rocket." And so the next day, John came back, but I didn't come back. And he saw this guitar there that I'd liked, and he bought it and kept it until Christmas Eve, and came over to the house. And he had a little chipboard case, and he had a big red bow tied around it. And he walked in and, "Merry Christmas, John Prine and Santa Claus."
That's
A
beautiful.
really special thing.
Do you know
Yeah.
what year that is?
I think it's 62, but I'm not absolutely positive about that.
Those gold foils are beautiful, man.
Yeah, this thing sounds great. It's really, really great. I put flat wounds on it. It's cool.